Step into the Oracle Parlor, a podcast where those interested in witchcraft, psychic abilities, ghosts, and all things paranormal come to sip and spill the magical tea. This parlor is a space to grow by maintaining our curiosity over fear when it comes to the spooky and the paranormal. I'm your host, Jenny, otherwise known as Phantasma Witch. I'm a previous visual storytelling artist from animation, now full-time psychic witch, who is getting her MA in psychology to become a licensed therapist. Every other episode, I will share my paranormal experiences, different witchy experiences on a variety of topics, while other episodes, I will be talking with witchy guests of all backgrounds, from writers to artists to well-known social media witches, so we can learn about their practices and how they grew into their personal power. So get cozy and grab your tea. It's time to get mystical. Welcome back to the Oracle Parlor podcast, where this episode is all about the energetic forecast for the month ahead, which is September. So, as always, I will be starting with the energy that I tapped into. This is just me psychically kind of sensing in, feeling into whatever is coming up energetically for us in the month of September. And then after I go through that, I will be looking at some cards that I have pulled. I've not looked at them yet. I've pulled them. They're sitting here on my desk, and we will go through those as well. And if this is your first time listening, this is like a forecast of the energy, similar to a weather forecast. The weather forecast gives you a heads up of whether or not you need an umbrella, whether or not you need sunscreen. And maybe you do those things and you didn't need them after all, but that's okay because at least you were prepared, right? So if you listen to astrology podcasts, this is kind of hand in hand with it, but I'm not an astrologer and I don't do anything based on astrology. I just simply sit with whatever I'm psychically sensing into, and then I sit with the cards. So if you have listened to the previous episode, definitely check that out for the month of August to see what resonated, see what didn't. I noticed that for myself personally, last month for August, I had done a breakdown week by week of the energy forecasts. But for me, I noticed, similar to astrology, funny enough, the themes that were coming up were not exactly during those specific weeks. They were usually like a little before or a little after or somewhere in between sometimes. So for this one, I'm not doing the week by week breakdown like I tried last month. This time we're keeping it very open in general because I realized, having experienced it myself, that these themes may come up at any kind of given time for you. So it's good to, listen to this, take notes, see maybe where these themes are coming up throughout the month for you personally. So let's go ahead and get started. I have my notes here. So the first thing that I had seen in my mind's eye when I started to connect in was a lake or a big pond. It was very dark water and it was like really lush and green and full of plant life. And it's funny because this visual came in first and then some other senses started to happen. And then this came back around. And when it came back around a little later in the reading, I saw the lake again, except for this time I could see a lot more information. And I noticed that it was very reminiscent of the moon card from tarot, from the major arcana. And for anyone who is not aware of the imagery on the moon card, we're talking about the imagery of Pamela Coleman Smith's design, Pixie. It is this body of water in which there is like a crustacean, like a lobster of some kind, or a crab, depending on, again, the deck that you're using, is coming up from this dark water. And on the land, there are two figures facing some mountains and a path, and there's a moon overhead, and there's a lot of images on this card. But this was the vibe that I got. This is kind of the imagery that I got. And when I say vibe, I mean it not only visually looked like the moon card, but it also felt like the moon card. So this was like really deep emotional work. This was like really subconscious levels of things coming up and coming into our awareness. It was a lot of unknowns rising to the surface. And so I thought this was really interesting because I noticed that instead of the two people that you see on the moon card sitting, like standing on the shore, there were two people. There was one person struggling to swim in the water, and there was another person who was offering them a hand to pull them out of the lake, to pull them up from the lake, so that way they could get fresh air and breathe. Not that they were drowning, they were just struggling. Like, if it was somebody who like knew how to swim but swam very poorly, and they were exerting way too much energy, way too much effort, and it was just like they were putting way too much into it, even though if they just kind of allowed themselves to float, it'd be a lot easier. And so this person that was lending a hand and trying to pull them up was trying to help them realize, oh, you can, the water is shallow enough, or oh, you can allow yourself to float. It was that kind of feeling that I was getting. And it was funny because I noticed that the person in the water that was struggling was like the inner child, and the one that was offering a hand, a helping hand, was the true self, or your higher self. And so it's almost like one of the major themes this month is going to be really doing that internal work of really helping yourself out. And one of the things that tends to happen with the inner child is we tend to have old wounds that we end up acting out from. So if something happens and we have a reactionary response that's not quite like us, like maybe we're the type of person that, we consider ourselves very even-headed, very mindful, but then something happens that reactivates some sort of like old way of doing or thinking, and then we're acting in old patterns and old ways that are not who we are anymore. And it's really surprising, and it's like really draining of our energy because we're doing all this extra effort or extra energy being poured into it when it doesn't need to be that difficult. And so it's really going to be a month of, making sure that you're mindfully aware of reparenting yourself, being kind to yourself, being the person you need to be for the child that didn't have that. So what I mean by that is like um, maybe you had a parent who was telling you like to stop crying and don't be so emotional. Well, maybe this month that reverse of that is true. Maybe you need to reparent yourself and be like, I'm allowed to be upset. I'm allowed to cry about this. I'm allowed to be emotional. Or maybe, you had someone who was always pushing you outside of your comfort zone and outside of your boundaries when you were younger, and all you wanted to do was go into a cave for a little bit and just recharge your batteries, but you were told that that's not okay because you have to be so happy and smiling all the time. Well, maybe this month then the guidance for you is, you know, how can you tend to yourself in a way that you're allowed to have those boundaries? You're allowed to recharge your batteries. You're allowed to say no to things. You're allowed to go within for that short time. So use this month, if you can, to make space and sit down and connect with that inner child and connect with yourself and ask, how can the me now, how can my higher self help the wounded version of me, that older version of me that may be having these reactionary responses to something that may be going on this month, to something that may be reactivating in ways that I was not expecting. So being tender with yourself, being supportive of yourself, being forgiving of yourself. These are all going to be the big overarching important themes for this month. And the other thing that I got with this scene that I saw playing out was that this higher self, this true self, was helping that inner child who was struggling in order to prevent them from becoming angry, bitter, and hateful. Because it's easy to be stuck in the pattern, to be stuck in this frustration for so long that it starts to eat away. But if we just had that little bit of kindness, that little bit of help, that little bit of understanding, then we can release it a little bit easier and we don't get stuck in it. So the next thing that I saw was I had seen a person in a hot air balloon looking over a valley at dawn, and I heard the words, get perspective. So this is really speaking to, this month, before making any kind of decisions or anything, before speaking to anything with like absolute certainty, take a step back. Try to look at the bigger picture. Try to step back and look at the forest through the trees. Witness the valley from the hot air balloon before you get back on the ground and, only see the dirt and the rocks that are immediately in front of you instead of the mountains off in the distance. Try to allow yourself a moment to really take everything in whatever situations come up. And just, again, making space, making time to take a step back, to take a breather, to take it all in, and allow yourself to feel whatever happens, whatever feelings are coming up for you. Whether that's taking a moment to truly sit in the joy of the moment, to truly sit in the sadness and the grief of it, to truly allow yourself to actually feel those feelings instead of just being like, oh no, I'm sad. We're just going to look down here at the dirt on the ground instead of, oh no, I'm sad. Let me sit in this valley for as long as I'm able to, for as long as I'm comfortable to process that in my body and go, oh, that's sadness. Yep. So with that came this longing, a heartache, kind of like deep desire and pull. And it's funny, even as I'm saying that, I'm feeling it again. It's so visceral. This really was an interesting sensation because I was like, okay, what is wanting to come up with this? And I heard it's laborious. And I saw a lumberjack who was doing a lot of heavy lifting. And what this kind of made me think was, you know, we're doing all of these things that need to be done before you can even start to blueprint the cabin that you want to build. So what do I mean by that? So we may have a goal, we may have a desired outcome, we may have the bigger, grander picture that we want to achieve, but we can't just jump to that conclusion. We can't just jump to the end goal and be like, all right, it's done. We have to, in this case, be the lumberjack. We have to collect the wood. And what does that mean? We have to get the tools and the team to help us collect the wood, and then we have to prep the wood to make sure that we can use it as building materials, and then we have to make sure we've gathered enough materials, and then we have to find the location for where we want to do our building, and then we can do the blueprints, and then once the blueprints are done, we can start building, but building takes time, and then eventually we get to the beautiful cabin that has all the furnishing in it. Even though we have this deep, intense desire to be at the end, to be at the thing that we want to have done, to have accomplished already, there's still steps that need to be taken. And this actually felt very much connected to the Get Perspective hot air balloon. So the connection that I really felt drawn to between these two visuals that I was getting was making sure that before we try to jump to the conclusion of the end result that we're trying to achieve, whatever that may be this month, that we actually take a step back, get perspective, and understand that we still have to do the work. And when I say it's laborious, that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. It just means that there's work that needs to be done. And are we willing to do that work? Are we willing to take a step back and plot that out, plan that out, figure out what needs to be done, get the grander scale image before we start to hyper focus on the immediate thing right in front of us? And then the last thing that I'll say before we move on to the cards is that the entire time I had been doing this, tapping into the energy forecast for September, I I kept getting a sensation in my throat that felt almost like a lump, but also kind of gurgly. It was very strange. It usually, if I get the sensation that we're not saying what needs to be said, it just sounds, it feels like a lump in my throat. It feels like there's a cut off here where I can't get it out. But this didn't feel like that. This felt very different. And I couldn't make sense of the sensation because it wasn't something I've felt before psychically in this way. And so I kind of asked for more clarification. And I had gotten a couple of different things. I had gotten an image of being tangled in seaweed, as well as if you've seen The Incredibles, there's a scene in The Incredibles where Mr. Incredible is has these little like sticky balls that are stuck to him and they're slowly inflating and he's unable to move because they just keep piling on him. Um, and so these two things combined, um, it's it was really about making sure that you're mindful of your words and that you're not agreeing to too many things to the point that you're stuck in a situation that you can't really get out of. This can be, taking on too many tasks. This can be saying, I can absolutely do this, and then you actually can't, but you're saying you can because your emotional bandwidth and your energy is depleted, but you're still saying, yeah, I'll do it. No, it's fine. It's fine. So be very mindful this month about how you are agreeing to things and whether it's actually in alignment, how you are using your words, and if that's in alignment. When I say in alignment, I mean, again, if you're saying you can do something when you actually can't, that's not in alignment. Those are opposing forces, right? So saying, no, actually, I'm not available to do this right now. Ask me in another week. That's more in alignment if that's true to how you feel. So being very aware of that as you move through the month. So, with all that being said, let's move on to our cards. And before I say that, if you enjoy the month ahead readings, if you enjoy the podcast in general, it would be really, really helpful if you left a review, if you shared wherever you listen to this podcast. And if you would like to support me, I have a Patreon with tiers as low as $1, just as a, hey, thanks, I appreciate everything you do for free. I sincerely appreciate you for being here and listening and supporting me. So let's get into it. So I have 3 decks that I pulled from, and I pulled 1 card from each deck. So the first one that I have pulled from is, and all of these will be linked below in the description of this podcast episode. So the first one that I have is this beautiful Major Arcana deck. So I shuffled this deck. It's only got the Major Arcana, and this is going to be the card of the general overarching in our face kind of energy theme and forecast. The next one that I have pulled from is the Modern Witch Tarot deck. And this one, the card that I pulled from this deck is just about what is the deeper underlying energetic themes of the month. And then lastly, my favorite oracle of the Radiant Sun. This is just kind of like the general overview. I really like this deck because it has random words associated with it. So it's just kind of like, what is the punctuation? What is the punctuation on this? So let's start with this one. We have the Hierophant. Next, ooh, we have the Six of Swords. And then lastly, we have criticism. So let's go through these one at a time, shall we? So the major overarching theme with the Hierophant is very much in alignment with some of the themes that we were talking about in the energetic forecast, in the sense that it's using your words wisely, speaking from a place that's truly aligned. And it's also about kind of being able to help yourself as well as helping others. This goes back to like those figures I saw in what I had like felt like was very much a moon card feeling. But this is all about being aware that you have that inner knowledge that you can bring forward and summon and do what needs to be done, say what needs to be said, and move from an area that feels very much, again, when I say in alignment, I mean it resonates with you energetically or spiritually, emotionally, mentally, like it feels like you're connected in. The thing with the Hierophant, and this goes back to that throat feeling and the sticky trap, is very much like making sure that you aren't saying things that you may, I don't want to say regret later, but you don't want to be saying things that may end up being more harmful to yourself or others in the end. And that's where that mindful awareness comes in. And with the Six of Swords, this also goes back to the getting perspective. So with Six of Swords, it's about not getting so caught up in our own thinking, not getting so caught up in our own emotions that we can't see what's ahead of us. So needing to be able to get that perspective, to take a step back, to allow yourself to be where you are, to feel what you're feeling, and to recognize that sometimes you need the assistance of other people to come in and help you navigate that. Sometimes you need somebody who truly loves and cares for you, or a therapist, or found family. You know what I'm saying? It's all about taking a step back to get the perspective, whether that's with the assistance of somebody who can kind of help us guide us through that, or being that person who doesn't, again, over jump to the conclusion of like, well, this is where I am and this is how it's going to be and this is, like we were saying with the lumberjack, like this is the end goal and that's how it is and there's no way around it. And it's like, no, take a breath, take some time to take a step back, to slow down and get that perspective. And that's, my friends, where the criticism card comes in. Because with the criticism card, this is really about not, again, not being hard on yourself, not playing into these old patterns and wounds that you have. This goes back to what we were talking about with the, um, the two figures in the lake, one struggling and one trying to help, and that these are two different sides of ourselves that are at a struggle here. So being gentler with yourself, not over criticizing yourself, not being overly harsh with yourself, and being able to have that passionate pull, that desire to reach that end goal without being so hard on yourself to hurry up and go and just be done with it, and why am I not there yet, and why is it not happening yet, and all of those things. So I feel like these cards really weave together. I feel like this happens a lot with these readings. These cards really weave together the story that we have gotten from this psychic energetic forecast reading for a lot of these repeating themes that we have coming through. So hopefully this gives you that guidance. This gives you that boost of energy. It gives you some perspective on moving through the month of September with a little bit more ease, a little bit more clarity. And I hope that it provides you with what you need to get through this month. I am so grateful for you all again. Thank you so much. And I will see you in the parlor for the next episode, which I'm excited to share. I believe this upcoming episode is going to be a guest interview. And make sure to check back in for the next month ahead reading at the end of September. Thank you so much for joining me in the parlor for this episode. If you want more psychic magical tips, make sure to follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Phantasma Witch. Phantasmawitch. Also, be sure to check out my Patreon, where I have a Discord community. I do Q&As, live classes, workshops, and more. To book a reading or consultation directly with me, you can go to my website, www.phantasmawitch.com. All of these links can be found in the episode description. And please, if you enjoyed this show, make sure you go leave a rating, leave a review, share it with others. It really helps the show to reach new listeners if you take a moment to do that, and it is sincerely appreciated. Shout out to the artist Cat Lines, who helped me to redesign the podcast logo to the beautiful magical teacup you see today. See you, mystical friends, in the parlor next time.